I'm Heidi with Healing Harvest Homestead, and I'm going to share with you today my elderberry syrup recipe. Now, I know that everybody in the world out there has an elderberry syrup recipe, and it's probably very similar to mine, but the fact of the matter is that I just took these two bags of elderberries out of the freezer, and they've been in the fridge for the last couple of days, and I need to make syrup. I need to get it done. So I thought, well, what the heck? I will add my own personal video for elderberry syrup. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get this is an 8-quart Dutch oven cast iron pan. You can use any kind of stock pot or any kind of large pan. Also, if you're working with dried elderberries, you know, if you don't have fresh like I have right here, then using dried elderberries is just fine. In fact, I'm going to be doing a video for dried elderberry syrup on the tea shop here pretty soon. And basically, dried is fine. What you want to do with dried elderberries is you're going to double the water. Okay, so I'm going to kind of show you what I'm doing here. I'm using a massive amount of elderberries, I'll be honest. I'm going to go ahead and send a lot of this syrup to my kids and to family members and friends if they want it. And, you know, so I'm making a lot right now. But dried elderberries are fine. In fact, I make elderberry syrup with dried berries at least once a year, sometimes more. It turns out great. What I'm doing right now is I'm kind of just stripping them off of the stems a little bit. It's honestly easier to do this when they're frozen solid, but I pulled them out of the freezer the other day and I didn't have time to get to it. Have you guys ever done that? And then I had to put them back in the fridge, and so they are defrosted and they are a little bit difficult to pull off. Now, one thing to know about elderberries is that the stems and the leaves have some cyano compounds that can be toxic, not wildly toxic or anything like that, but they can cause nausea and if you're not preparing them correctly. When you're cooking your elderberry mixture, you're actually going to be deactivating the cyano compounds. So it's really not a big deal. So mainly the reason I'm pulling them off the stem is to give me some more room in the pot. So let me go ahead and pull this off. Pretty much that's about as much as I'm gonna do here with that bunch. And then because I'm cooking these, the heat deactivates the cyano compounds, so I'm just not gonna worry much about it. I've got stems in here, and you know, I never had a problem with the you know, cooking of the elderberries. I do like to get the big stems off, like that guy there. It's a pretty large one. But other than that, I just sort of don't worry about it. Okay, let's see here. If you're interested in knowing if you have elderberries growing around you, or knowing how to identify them, if you know they do grow around you, you can go to my website at healingharvesthomestead.com. I have hundreds of herbalism and foraging and fermentation and all kinds of natural living kinds of articles over there. But I do have an article on how to identify and forage for elderberry. Okay, you do need to identify the tree accurately because there are some lookalikes out there, and you don't want to get them mixed up with things that are truly dangerous, okay? So you definitely want to know your elderberries. All right, so there's one bag. Let's get this other bag in there. Recently, while I'm pulling these off, recently I did a video on how to make an elderberry and echinacea tincture. I just want to talk about that for a moment because I've seen recipes out there on the interwebs for elderberry and echinacea syrup combinations, and I just want to make a statement here about echinacea. Echinacea is a wonderful herb for helping you get over a cold or a flu faster. But it shouldn't be taken as a preventive, okay? It should not be taken every single day. Now, elderberry, on the other hand, is an excellent preventive, and it is an antiviral herb, and you can take elderberry every single day. So it's okay to have both of those preparations, but I would definitely not be taking the one with Echinacea as a preventive if you're not sick. If you're getting sick, it's wonderful, okay? But if you're not sick, it's not. So if you're not sick, just stick with your plain old elderberry syrup every day. And if you are getting sick, definitely go ahead and add in some Echinacea. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can reduce the number of stems from this bag. Yeah, every fall what I do is I go out and I forage and harvest elderberry, and I use some at that time. We get prepared for the fall and winter months, and then I freeze a bunch because always I have people who need it during the winter time, and I have it ready. And it's so easy to make. It's, you know, super easy to make, and that way we just don't run out of our elderberry preparations. Oops, don't want to put that over there. All right, so I've got an 8-quart pot of elderberry here, and I'm going to go ahead and just cover it with some water. I'm going to count the quarts out. Usually I don't, but for you guys right now, I'm going to do that, so we kind of have a general idea of how much water. And again, if I were using dried herbs or dried elderberries with this, then what I would do is use a little extra water, okay? And I would cover the dried berries about, yay high. All right. Let me go ahead and get water in there, and then we'll spice it up. All right, so I'm gonna spice this up with some ginger. I'm not really gonna measure this. I have been making this so long, but in general, for this amount of herb, I'm gonna put in about that much ginger. And ginger's pretty strong, so if you don't like ginger, then back off on it a little. I'm gonna add some cinnamon. Now, these herbs that I'm adding are very, very nice because they add to the flavor of the syrup, but they also have medicinal properties as well. Mainly they're anti-inflammatory and carminative. Clove buds, which I'm adding right now, do add some extra antimicrobial powers, which is nice. Then I'm gonna add some astragalus root. Astragalus root has a lovely flavor. It's kind of sweet, and I think it balances it out nicely. But the best thing of all about astragalus root, I'll just toss all that in there, is that it is also an immune boosting adaptogen herb. So it's very, very useful for your system. And now I'm going to take this over here to the stove, and I'm going to bring it to a low simmer, and I'm just going to let it simmer for about 20-30 minutes. At that point with the lid on, and then I'm going to take the lid off and I'm going to reduce it a little bit, okay? Okay, so the elderberries and the spices have been simmering in this large pot now for around 30 minutes, and with the lid on, and I am just checking it, and honestly it's looking really good. So I'm going to remove the lid now and let it continue simmering. I did turn down the heat, and I'm just going to let it reduce a little bit because that's going to give me a really powerful liquid. So this is your next step. Okay, so the elderberries are still simmering on the stove with all their spices in the water, and basically I'm letting it reduce to about half, and then at that point I'm going to strain it off into this bowl and colander piece. I can't find my big colander, so we're gonna do a little makeshift setup here, but I'm going to show you how I get my bottles prepared. So if I'm using mason jars or pint jars, I'll just sanitize them in the dishwasher and give them a good rinse. These are brand new amber glass bottles though, and I do want to be sure that they are sterile inside, and I also don't want to take the time to wash them. So what I'm doing is I'm pouring in some 151 proof Everclear. I use this to make tinctures with, but occasionally when I have a thing going on like this, I'll use it to sterilize things because it is about 75% alcohol And that means that it will disinfect things really well, okay? For skincare products, if I'm making skincare formulations and I need to sterilize a bottle, I might use isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol. But if it's a food item like this, then no, I'm going to go ahead and use a food grade alcohol. All right, so that's my reasoning for doing this. And because it's food grade, I'm not going to worry too much about, you know, making sure they're dry, because the amount of alcohol that's going to be left in here is just minimal. All right, so I'm just getting my bottles ready. I'm gonna let them just sit out here. I'm using the lids as well to, as I shake it, the lid is what's stopping it. And these are 8-ounce bottles. You could definitely use 2-ounce bottles, 3-ounce bottles, 4-ounce bottles, whatever size you like. But I figure I'm gonna go ahead and send my kids 8-ounce bottles. So that way they will have a good size bottle. Yes, that's had alcohol in it. All right, sometimes I forget. All righty, about done here. I might go get a few more bottles, but I think I'm gonna store, if I have any extra, I'm gonna go ahead and store it in mason jars. So, there we go. All righty, all sterilized, all good. Okay, so you can see here, it's reduced quite a lot. It's about an inch lower than it was when we started. I'm gonna let it go probably another good, maybe half inch, and that should be plenty. Because I used a whole bunch of elderberries, I have a lot of elderberries in this. If I had used fewer elderberries, I first of all wouldn't have used all the liquid that I used, but I would probably let it reduce until I've got a really strong syrup or juice. And you can kind of tell how things are going here by looking at the liquid itself. I want it a little bit stronger than that, so I'm just going to wait a few more minutes. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and strain off the elderberries away from the liquid. And what we're gonna have left over at that point is leftover plant matter, which is called the mark for herbalists who are making an herbal preparation, and the liquid will be separate. And then I'm gonna show you what we're going to do with that. But first off, I wanna point out that I did line my colander here with some cheesecloth, mainly because the holes in this pot, it actually goes to a steamer, but they're quite large, and I don't want any seeds or bits of other herbal matter getting through, so hence the cheesecloth. Here we go. I'm gonna take this off, and I guess I better use some pot holders so I don't kill myself. Okay. This is where Mr. V comes in handy sometimes, but strain that off. Okay, put this back over here. Alrighty, and then we're going to lift this out. Okay. Now, one of the things that you want to do with your syrup is you want to measure your liquid out. That's kind of important. But I'm going to look at this really fast because I may want to simmer this down even a little bit farther to reduce the water content even more. So I'm just going to look at that. That's right here. Grab my handy dandy spoon. It's really dark. It's nice and dark. So I think we're actually pretty good. Let me see how much more liquid I get out of this. Get my strainer. going on again. Actually, here we're going to do this. I'm going to pour this liquid into this measuring cup. Ouch. And we will start measuring out how much liquid I have here. So that's 4 cups in there. All right, put this back in here. It is rather a messy process, as you can see. All right. Or it can be if you're anything like me. But here we go. Alrighty. This is a really heavy pan. It's a cast iron Dutch oven. And I just love it. It's really great for so many things. But it's heavy. Ooh, goodness gracious. Okay. All right. And let this strain out. And then what I'm going to go do is I'm going to put the plant matter in the compost tin outside. And I'm going to add some sweetener, which is honey, to the syrup. I'm going to let it cool a little bit, because as we all know, when you add honey to heated liquid, it kills the enzymes, and we don't necessarily want that. But okay, I think I got most of it here. Okay, so right now I've got 10 cups of the elderberry juice in my big pot, and I'm going to now go ahead and add my honey. So this is about 32 ounces of honey, which is about 4 cups. So generally speaking, you want to add equal parts liquid of your elderberry juice to your honey if you want a very strong product that's got a nice shelf life. You are going to have to refrigerate your syrup, but the more honey or sugar you have in it, the higher or the more preserved it is, okay? So I, on the other hand, I personally do not like a lot of sweet sugars in my syrups. Mr. V and I really try to tend to stay away from the sweetener. So what I'm going to do is make this for my kids and my grandkids. And I know that they're going to want it a little sweeter, most likely. And by the way, let's go ahead and talk about the taste of this really fast. So somebody in my herb group the other day, Practical Herbs with Heidi, mentioned that it really smelled bad when it was cooking. And I was kind of floored, because I personally love the smell of elderberry syrup cooking. And honestly, I think it's because of the spices that I add. I add the, the ginger, the cinnamon, the cloves. It smells like Christmas, okay? But if you don't add the spices and you're just making a plain elderberry syrup, then yes, it's probably not going to smell that great. And I have to talk to you about the taste. The taste of the juice, even with the spices, is not good. Elderberry is not a sweet berry, and it's not going to be one of those berries that, you're going to sit there and eat a bunch of. Number one, because they don't taste good, and number two, you could actually get a little nausea or stomach upset from them. But, I think personally it smells delicious, and once we get the sweetener in here, it's going to be amazing. It's just going to taste so good. And the neat thing is you can use it for pancakes, you can use it for all kinds of things that you would use syrup for, and at the same time you're getting that antiviral immune boosting benefit of the elderberry. So get the rest of my honey in here. What I want to do now at this point is stir it until it's all mixed in and dissolved, because you don't want any globs of honey sitting in there, right? And you're going to end up with your beautiful, beautiful tasting, beautiful smelling elderberry syrup. And once I get this dissolved, I'm going to show you how to bottle it up, okay? Go ahead and lay that on the side. Use some more honey. So I'm about 2 cups short of honey here, but that's okay. It's going to be still very, 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 very good. All right, so now we're at the bottling stage. I use a funnel, and I've got my pitcher, and I simply pour my syrup into each bottle, trying not to make a mess because it's very sticky. Now it's a syrup, nice strong elderberry syrup, and I'm simply going to put lids on these, let them cool down. They're actually cooling right now. They're perfect, really. And get these shipped off to my family. How you use this syrup, I think I just mentioned, but you can put it on, you can use it as a food, okay? It's really tasty and delicious. But for medicinal purposes, and as a, you know, to help keep your body healthy and well, take a tablespoon once or twice a day. Children can actually take less than that, but it's likely they're going to want more, okay? So use your good judgment. It's a beautiful, lovely syrup, very safe. And I have to tell you, when I was a little girl, we didn't make elderberry syrup. I didn't know about it back then. But what we did make was elderberry jam, which in reality, looking back, because I helped my dad and my mother make tons of batches of elderberry jam every year, it was serving the purpose of the syrup. And we kids really didn't get sick very often in the winter time. So I have a feeling that's probably why. All right, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make elderberry syrup, and maybe I'll hop on here if you guys want. Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see how I make it with dried elderberries, I'm happy to do that too. All right, I'll talk with you later. Do you know, one more thing I want to just mention here as I'm filling up these bottles? Let's talk about the cost of elderberry syrup in the stores. You guys, it's really expensive. I believe it's going for around $20 for a little 2 to 4 ounce bottle, okay? These are 8 ounce bottles, and do you know how much this cost me? It cost me the price of the honey, okay? And, you know, we all know honey's fairly expensive, and I get my honey at the farmer's market. So it's really not all that expensive for the amount of elderberry syrup that we're getting out of it. But, you know, make your own, you guys, if you can. You know, you can purchase your elderberries online. If you're fortunate, you can go out and forage them. And go to my website if you need to know how to identify elderberry. I've got a really good blog post on there with pictures to show you what the leaves look like and the flowers in the spring, which is what you kind of want to look at. And then, gosh, make your own if you can. And if you can't, it's certainly okay to purchase elderberry syrup. It's so good for you anyway. All right, see you later.